Hi, everybody. This is Tarun from ReturnSafe. I'm excited to speak with you all today about how to prevent COVID-19 outbreaks on campus with screening, contact tracing, and testing. So very excited to speak with you. Hey, Sharon. Hey, Eliana. So the purpose of this session is really to help lay out a plan for how campuses should go about securing their campus from biological threats. How do you implement best practices and protocols so that you can create a safe bubble around the campus, protect the students, faculty, and everybody involved? So really excited to get into it and discuss this all with you. We'll be taking, feel free to type in questions as we go into the panel below the presentation, and we'll get to all of the questions at the end of the presentation. So ReturnSafe, we call ourselves a biosecurity company. So let's talk about biosecurity and viral outbreaks. The first thing to talk about is really that COVID-19 is really not the first major viral outbreak, and it certainly won't be the last. If you look at the pattern of how the frequency of these outbreaks and the magnitude of these outbreaks, one of the things you'll notice is right here towards the end of this timeline, which is really the last 15 years, we have had almost 10 major viral outbreaks. And that's a stunning number. And if anything, these kinds of outbreaks are increasing in frequency, driven by an increasing population density, globalization, and they are, as much as we'd like for COVID-19 to be a complete outlier and the world to return to normal, I think it's pretty clear that we have to prepare ourselves for not just COVID-19, but for the virus that could come after. Now, if you've been watching the news, there's obviously a lot of ink being spilled about vaccines. And vaccines, unfortunately, are not a magic bullet that's going to make this virus go away or any virus go away. If you look at the history of the last 9 or 10 major outbreaks, we've only developed vaccines for 3 of them. And for those scenarios, we haven't stopped those viruses, any of them, completely. In fact, we have stopped some viruses, SARS and MERS. And the way we stopped SARS and MERS is through following best practices around screening, testing, and tracing, not through vaccines. So I think this is a really important point that, everybody's hoping for a vaccine to be the cure, but it's not going to be the magic bullet that really solves all of our problems. And we have to put in place infrastructure to prevent and contain these infectious diseases that goes beyond a vaccine. Now, so important because even when a vaccine is developed, it is not something that comes in time. And even when it does come, there's a lot of resistance from people to taking a vaccine, particularly one for COVID-19, which could be rushed. And the medical experts that are already talking about this, COVID-19 is already mutated. And the strain of the virus that we see in the US is actually the Italian strain of the virus, not the Wuhan strain of the virus. And because of that, we can expect that when a vaccine does come, it's likely to not handle all of the mutations that are occurring in the population as we speak. So our belief is that COVID-19 has really established the need for biosecurity. And we coined this phrase biosecurity because we think it's a good analogy to cybersecurity. 10 years ago, cybersecurity was not that big of a deal. Now with the Sony high-profile hacks in corporate America with Sony being hacked and Equifax being hacked, it created a need for cybersecurity, and now every institution has cybersecurity policies and technologies in place. In quite the same way, it's our belief that biosecurity is going to be the category, which is a new industry that's being formed so that we can safeguard institutions from these biological threats and maintain business continuity. So we don't have to keep shutting down buildings and shutting down campuses every time there's an outbreak. So what is a biosecurity platform? Now, biosecurity, we think of this as covering a few different areas: screening, testing, tracing, and case management as well. And what that really involves is first making sure that sick people aren't coming to work, that if they are diagnosed for COVID, that you stay home. Testing is about figuring out, how often should I test people? What do I do? How do I get the test results back from the lab? And how do I act on that information as an institution once I get that information? And then contact tracing is about notifying people that were exposed to someone that was infected so that we can let them know. So as part of this, we've built a platform where a lot of this capability is built into the ReturnSafe platform. And it is also our belief that no one company can tackle this on their own. It's such a big problem that it's going to take a village and a community approach. So part of what we're doing as a biosecurity platform is to integrate with all of the best of breed solutions out there so that we can take the ReturnSafe platform and connect a building access management system, telehealth systems, wearables, infrared cameras that could detect if someone has a fever, and all of that flowing into one place so that the organization can prepare for and contain outbreaks as they occur. Now, how we got started in all this is it's me, my personal story. And my sister got married in December, and she moved to Singapore. Now, Singapore was prepared for COVID, and I would call on her to check up on what was going on. And she would mention to me, wow, actually things are pretty all right here. The government's doing a great job. And as I dove into it, I realized that actually the reason the Singapore government was doing a great job is because they had dealt with SARS and MERS beforehand. So I came to the conclusion that the United States really was going to be unprepared, and we needed a big effort to create technology to fight the pandemic. And so I started a nonprofit organization called Corona Trace. And it was an overwhelming show of support where we had 500 plus volunteers in just a matter of days, working nights and weekends to build technology to contain this outbreak. And we made a lot of progress with it. And then we came to a further realization that actually, unlike the countries like Singapore and Korea, where the government could deploy technology like this and get everybody to use it, here in America, people are so resistant to the idea of government doing things and infringing on civil liberties that we are going to have to take a different path. So that's why we formed really ReturnSafe as an institution to help, rather than try to help the government, helping universities, helping nursing homes, helping manufacturing facilities. So we formed, so our mission is to really keep these communities safe from infectious diseases. Now, the problem is very complex because if you look at, there's a lot of different stakeholders involved. There's the university itself, there's students, faculty, and staff, and they all have different needs. Institutions have to open up and do it safely. And the students really want to know that they're being kept safe. The parents are another audience that want to know their children are being kept safe. And increasingly, we're seeing faculty obviously being concerned about in-person classes because that audience tends to skew a little bit older. And so, how do you meet all of these different requirements and so many different stakeholders? Now, the CDC has offered some guidelines. You know, they've said if feasible, they highly recommend a daily health check, and they want this to be done. They recommend that this be done primarily in a self-assessment, so that we can make sure that people that are sick and have symptoms don't come into work. As much as possible, they want to increase the amount of testing, and they recommend that contact tracing also be conducted by the organization that's opening up a physical space. So what we've done is to take all of these recommendations from CDC, from OSHA, from EEOC, and all of these federal bodies, and combine that into a risk management solution for COVID, which combines screening, testing, and tracing in one application. So how does that work? The way the app works is there's a daily check-in. Every student that's on campus, staff, faculty gets to download an app. This is also available with the mobile web for people that don't want to install an app, and it's also available on desktop for people that don't have a smartphone. And they can complete a daily check-in every day. And it's a simple questionnaire. We'll show you that in a minute. Once you complete the questionnaire, you get a boarding pass to come to class that day. You get to say, you know, you're cleared, you know, you don't have any symptoms, you haven't been tested. We've determined that you can come to class today. And they can show this when they enter class or enter campus that they've completed the check-in. We've also built into the app the idea of a social distancing alarm, where two phones can automatically vibrate if they come within 6 feet of each other. And that's based on using Bluetooth technology running in the background. We also use the same technology to figure out who you may have come into contact with, so that we can anonymously, keeping your information private, notify them that they came into contact with someone that tested positive for COVID. So the daily check-in is really simple. You get a push notification or an SMS message. You can press on it, and then you can you answer very simple questions. You know, what symptoms do you have? Have you been tested recently? If you have a fever, what's your temperature? And when you answer, and when did your symptoms actually begin? And at the end of that, you get this boarding pass, which can also be displayed as a QR code. Now, depending on the answers to your question, if your symptoms, if you have 2 or more symptoms for COVID, then your recommendation is don't come to class. You know, you should probably attend classes virtually, and all of that is managed through the application. So one of the things we've been doing is to partner with all of the other companies that are creating great technologies in the space. One of which is a company called Athena Security. And they started as a gun detection system for college campuses and K through 12 schools. And when COVID happened, they've expanded the capabilities of that company to now also include temperature screening. And so what's really great about this company and integrating their technology into our system is that we're able to take the existing cameras on campus and turn them into gun detection cameras, but then we can also put infrared cameras in specific locations to take temperature automatically as well. So you can be alerted if someone with fever is walking around campus. Now, this technology doesn't actually know who you are, but it can actually absolutely pinpoint that you're running a temperature. With testing, we have a few different mechanisms. I mean, the main thing that we have right now is the ability for people to self-report that they tested positive. We also have an administrator portal where the student health center, if they're conducting the test, can upload this information into the system as well. What all of that leads to is a contact tracing capability where if someone tests positive, we need to immediately figure out who are the people that they came into contact with during their infectious period. So our application on the desktop, which can be used by the student health department or HR for faculty and staff, is able to produce an automatic report which shows you these are all the people that this person came into contact with during infectious period. Now, the app isn't always the answer. In some scenarios, it could be better for you to deploy a hardware-based approach for contact tracing, and that can be done through these Bluetooth-based lanyards, which is like an ID card or an ID card holder, or even a wristband. Now, what these devices do is, again, using Bluetooth technology, we can figure out if they came in within 6 feet contact of somebody else. And using all of this information, we're able to pull in heat maps and reports of where people are congregating so that you can make sure that you're doing adequate cleaning in those areas, or even be alerted if more than 20 people are all congregated in a small area. Now, one of the important things to mention here is this kind of technology can be used for more than just COVID. We already have schools and universities we're working with that have discovered that this could be useful for classroom attendance. It could be used for active shooter scenarios, and it could be used for a whole host of things beyond contact tracing and COVID safety. So COVID might accelerate the adoption of this kind of technology, but there's a lot you can do with it, beyond COVID. For manual contact tracing, we have the ability for people to just keep a log of maybe which classes they attended in person, or who they might have met in person. And all of this information, again, feeds into the HR dashboard, where you can create role-based access. So certain people can see certain information. You can modify the policy and the questions to be very specific. One of the things we take very seriously here is that this new app lives on an island. So we've integrated it with all of the leading HR systems that are in use, and it's not on the list, but as we've been working closer with universities, we've heard that Blackboard and Canvas and Ellucian and other technologies that are in use by universities are also integrated as well. And we have single sign-on capability through all this. So you can log in with any Okta or SAML or OpenID, any single sign-on system, so that students, staff, and faculty don't have to create a whole nother login system for this app. They can just log in with the existing login that they already use to access information at the university. Now, one of the things that's just really absolutely new here is that we're collecting personal health information in this app. In some cases, it's something as simple as somebody's temperature or their symptoms. In some cases, it's their test results. And so it's incredibly, incredibly important when we're collecting this kind of information that we guard it really, really well. So we've built all of this on a HIPAA compliant backend. That's a SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. It maintains the highest bar with regards to security and data privacy, because we don't want to solve this problem by creating a whole nother problem with regards to privacy and security. And so that's been incredibly important for us from the start, is how do we solve this problem by maintaining a really, really high threshold for privacy and security. So one of the things that we're doing with our pricing model that we are very excited about is, I mentioned at the top, we started this whole thing as a nonprofit. So we are charging Fortune 500 companies, anywhere from $5 to $10 per person per month, so that we can then offer universities, schools, and nursing homes a 80% discount on their pricing and make it very affordable to reopen schools in person in the fall. So we're excited to announce that. And so our pricing for universities is $1 per person per month. And so it's incredibly cost effective. And we're only able to do that because we have these large Fortune 500 companies also paying for this technology, and they're subsidizing it so that we can make it cheaper for universities. So we're able to kind of follow our mission of keeping people safe, and by doing so in an affordable manner. So I'm just going to switch over here to do a quick demo. So I'll start with our backend here, and so you see a dashboard where you can see all of the people that are checking in. Our university view, instead of come to work, it says come to class. Instead of offices, our university view says buildings on campus. So you can drill down on who's completing the check-in every day, and it's all role-based access. So you can have certain people have access to certain information. So someone can access student information, or someone else can access faculty information. Now, the screening section really shows you where we can customize the screener. So you see all of the questions that we've loaded up into the app, and what are the recommendations that are made based on the answers to that question. And all of this is customizable by the end users. Over here to the right, we have this idea of a policy. And what is a policy is just a set of rules saying if somebody tests positive, this is what should happen. If somebody is waiting for test results, this is what should happen. If somebody has these symptoms, this is what should happen. By default, we load up these policies with the CDC guidelines, but we're able to customize that for each state or even each city. So if you want to edit the policies, you can just go in here and customize the policy to be something that makes sense for your organization. Now, lastly, we have the contact tracing capability. So if people start getting tested on campus, we have increasingly student health centers starting to do the testing, but wherever someone gets tested, if they report that they have a positive test, you get alerted, and we're able to pull up very quickly who might have came into contact with that person so that we can immediately alert them. We have the ability to send anonymous notifications to those individuals so that the information is never revealed as to who they might have been exposed from, but they know that they've been exposed so that they can take care and make sure that they're not exposing others. So let me walk you through a demo of the app. So you log in with your student ID credentials, and we take you through a simple onboarding experience. So why is this app being provided to students, staff, and faculty? So it's because we want you to stay safe on campus. We're trying to create this protective bubble. The way we do that is we do some daily check-ins to monitor your health and manage the community. And we ask for a couple of permissions, and then we drop you into the check-in. So let's go through the first check-in. So let's look at a simple scenario here where you have not been tested for COVID, and we have a list of symptoms. Maybe you don't have any of these symptoms. You say none of the above, and very quickly you get a recommendation. And today's recommendation is you're approved to return to campus. And then you get a campus boarding pass. So now this is a nice green screen where on campus you can just flash your screen in front of somebody just like you would when you're walking through an airline check-in. And if necessary, you can also show a QR code. So that's the simple experience here on mobile. If you have been tested positive, we ask you for a couple more questions, right? And for example, we ask you, what symptoms do you have? Do you have a fever? When did those start? And the app automatically changes its recommendation based on the answers to that question. It also does quarantine management, built in. So the app will recommend that you continue to stay at home or stay in the dorm room until such a time when the quarantine period is ended or your isolation period has ended. So let me flip over here and kind of show you a couple more screens in the demo. We have built into the app the idea of this physical distancing alerts, where if you come within 6 feet of somebody, it's going to alert you. And for transparency's sake, we also show you how many times that might have occurred in the past few weeks. And this is really just to make sure that the people using the app know that this kind of information is being gathered about them. From a logbook perspective, this is a way for people to keep a diary on their own device about who they may have come into contact with. So let's say a student had lunch with somebody else and they weren't wearing a mask. Maybe they didn't have their phone on them, or their phone battery might have died. In certain situations where you want to keep track of who you came into contact with, you can easily pull that up and just log a contact really quickly, confirm that that's been logged, and that's been stored. So if that information comes necessary in the future, it's always there, and you're not having to remember who you might have had lunch with, 5 days ago. So that's the gist of the app, and I'm gonna pause there and come back to the presentation. We just a bit about the team. We really assembled this team in March, right when COVID was really starting to accelerate here in the United States. Myself and Jason Story, the two of us, when we were 20, 21 years old, out of a college dorm room at the University of Texas, we built a company called Mutual Mobile, which is one of the largest mobile app development companies in the country. We built over 600 apps and had 300 plus employees. And if there's one thing that we know how to do, it's to build really great apps. And in a time of crisis, we thought, what better for us to do with our time than to build an app that is going to help the world recover from COVID. Our CTO and our VP of Marketing, Margaret and Jiku, they had a similar journey over the last 7 or 8 years. They built one of the leading companies called Kinvey, that has a HIPAA-compliant platform to build these kinds of apps. So piggybacking on both of our experience is how we were able to get this done so quickly and build all of this in such a rapid time frame. Now, it was very important to us that there's a lot of companies out there that are sort of technology companies that really don't think through the medical side. So we were excited to really add Dr. Reef Gillum to our team, who had been a surgeon for 25 years, and then later went on to build one of the largest electronic health records companies in the country. So he really brings together the medical side with the technology side, and we felt that was incredibly important in order for us to really bring the medical point of view to everything that we're doing, because this is not a technology problem, it's really a medical problem. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
So we have a couple of questions in the chat, and so I move them over, and I want to invite others to add questions as well. Okay, so I want to make sure that we cover this one. Will the app for distancing work if only on one phone? How do you access the app? And this was early in the presentation. I think you might have covered part of it, but it might be helpful for you to elaborate a little bit on that.
Sure. the the you need two phones to establish distance. So the distancing feature only works really if you have two phones. The app is really made available by the university for its students, and it can be downloaded, set to be downloaded either on the iPhone or Google App Stores. It can be made available under the university's name, or it can be made available in a generic version where the student just selects which university they're a part of and then log in. Beyond that, we know that not every scenario, it's not always going to work with an app. For example, in K through 12, not all the students have an app. Have a phone. So because of that, we partnered with the largest Bluetooth beacon companies so that we can have faculty and staff use the app, but you can have students just use the ID card and get most of the same information that way. Now, for screening, you still need to use an app. Again, it doesn't have to be the native app. The app is also available just as a mobile web app. It's available, by clicking a link on a text message, and it's also available on desktop. But when you use mobile web or desktop, you're not getting the physical distancing alerts. You're only going to get the daily screener.
Thank you. All right, so another question, do universities automatically enroll students into the app? How does this take privacy and HIPAA considerations into account? And where is the data being stored?
Yep. So the app is automatically, the universities automatically enroll students and staff into this app. So I think I mentioned before, we can connect the app into the single sign-on system that the university already has. So when the university adds a new student, that student is automatically added to the app. In fact, nobody has to enroll anybody. It's just automatic. And not only that, students, staff, and faculty can log in using the existing credentials that they already have. From HIPAA, absolutely. HIPAA, this is all built on a HIPAA compliant platform, and that's absolutely critical because this is personal health information. And with regards to privacy is, we could spend probably 20, 30 minutes talking just about privacy. Privacy, to take a step back and to talk about privacy from the very beginning, this is really trying to strike a balance. This whole crisis is about striking a balance between individual civil liberties, privacy being one of them, and saving lives and returning to normal. And it's very difficult to strike the perfect balance. And we have spent enormous amounts of time debating where is the right balance. I think one of the things that we found is that if you lean so hard in the direction of privacy that you're not going to do anything, then you end up losing your civil liberties in a completely different manner, which is to not be able to access physical spaces because the virus is continuing to rage on an uncontrolled manner. So there's absolutely a trade-off here between privacy and utility. And every university needs to make a choice on their own with regards to where that right balance is. What we've done is to make sure it's a flexible system where you can either require that the app be used or you can make it optional. I personally think that the universities that are, maybe the law professor at the university or the legal department gets really, pushes so hard with regards to privacy that they don't deploy something like this, are likely to end up in a situation where they have to shut down the university repeatedly during the semester because the cases go up. And we've seen that obviously in a city level, we've seen that at a state level, and I think some universities are going to learn the lesson the hard way, that we have to do something here, otherwise there's a problem. The best way to maintain privacy is to don't ask any questions, whether you're sick, whether you're being tested. But if you go that far, then I think we're going to end up with a problem down the road. The last thing I want to say about privacy here, and happy to take way more questions about privacy because I think it's a very interesting point, is that we're being there organizations are being fined by the government if they don't perform contact tracing, for instance. Now, what is even at least manually? They're not being fined if they don't use an app, but they're being fined if they don't do it. And OSHA requires that you collect this information to maintain a safe workplace. And the EEOC and OSHA have all clarified that an organization is well within its rights to collect this kind of information. So the fact of the matter is this kind of information has to be collected anyway. It's just a matter of, are you going to use an app to do it? Or are you going to use a piece of paper? Or are you going to do it over the phone? So I think there's no avoiding this reality that some personal information has to be traded off for access to create this kind of a bubble around the office, around campuses. It's just a question of how do we do it in the way that safeguards civil liberties the most.
Thank you. I think that was a really great answer to a very complex question. So I think everyone appreciates that. We have two more questions, and the next one is mostly for the audience, and I think we'd really appreciate it if you could answer in the chat. But would an integration with Blackboard Learn be of interest for ReturnSafe and Blackboard Learn to be integrated? Would that be something that your institutions are interested in? And so you can answer in the chat. And while people are thinking about that one, we have one other question. Is this for the US, North America only, or is there availability globally?
Yeah, so we are primarily focused on the US and North America. We think this is obviously where the crisis is the greatest. And we are starting to work with companies in other countries, organizations in other countries. But it is for us definitely a second priority compared to the US. Now, there's no reason why the app cannot be used outside of the United States other than the fact that there's probably some local laws and regulations that have to be taken into account, and potentially, depending on the country, internationalization about making the app available in different languages. So we're certainly open to, and we want to make it work for other countries. But we think this is a time of national crisis, and we think it's only right that we prioritize the United States and that we prioritize American companies first and foremost.
Great. We had a couple other questions come into the chat, and we can probably follow up on this one afterwards. It's, can you point to the documentation that OSHA and EOC puts out about data collection? That might be something that we can reach to this group afterwards. And then, have you considered Apple Watch type of technology for young children? I think you kind of covered this earlier, but maybe if you could help us understand that a little bit more clearly.
Absolutely. So yeah, the links to OSHA and EEOC, we can absolutely put out there after this presentation. I don't have them readily on hand, but there's a incredible amount of information out there from both organizations. With regards to Apple Watch, I think that is a really great idea. In fact, one of the things that is starting to happen is that there are a couple of companies, Oura Ring and the Whoop Strap, are a couple of wearables that are have shown a lot of promise in being able to detect or predict that someone might have COVID even before they start showing symptoms. So I haven't seen anything like that come out of the Apple Watch specifically yet, but I believe that these wearables are absolutely going to be a key in the future, where rather than having to report your symptoms every day, that those could be automatically detected through one of these wearables. And even before you start showing symptoms, we can alert you that you're at risk and you can take the adequate safeguards. So I think that's absolutely the future. What I imagine is all of us wearing some sort of a wearable device like an Apple Watch, or where we can kind of keep track of our health in real time and be notified that we are at risk of infecting others, and we can take adequate precautions.
Excellent. I think that's it for questions. So I'll turn it up. I think we're about ready to wrap up here. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts.
No, I think I just want to thank everybody for your time and the questions. They were really great questions. If you want to learn more about us, our website is returnsafe.com. And we I also wanted to mention, not only are we prioritizing the United States, we're also over the next 45 days, our first and most important priority is nursing homes, universities, and schools. So, we have a lot of organizations that are reaching out because they want to use this technology. And we've made a decision that we're going to be prioritizing as an organization nursing homes, universities, and schools, essential organizations that are incredibly vital for the economy as a whole, and that are doing such amazing national service for the country.
All right. Thanks so much. Thanks all for joining. Thank you, ReturnSafe. We really appreciate it.
Okay.